Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Liege in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 11, A Peaceful Day and a Newcomer. You really have it bad, Alois said as they ride back to the monastery alongside Alois' whole battalion of knights that Byleth sent to Agir's territory to help the Duke suppress a oncoming rebellion from the remaining loyalist of the Empire. Tell me about it, he said, remembering the incident when they are at Agir. I didn't think his troops and generals would be enthusiastic about their duel, he said with a sigh. Well, if the news of her grace appointing a mercenary that she found in the woods as her personal knight, then people would be bound to be curious about them, Alois said, especially since a lot of men are seeking her grace's hand in marriage and they seem to see you as a potential rival for her, Alois said. They don't need to worry about me being a competition for her affection, he said. Her grace doesn't see me like that, he said before hearing Alois coughed awkwardly along with several stiff-led chuckles from the other knights. Did I say something funny? He asked. None, Alois said blankly. Nothing at all, he said. That didn't seem like nothing, he thought. Idiot, Arvel said, in which the other knights agreed to. What? He asked, looking around in search for answers. Just an advice, laddie, Alois said. Don't hurt her or all of Fodlan will be hunting your head, he said. I would never do that, he said. She is too important to me to even think about hurting her, he stated before he heard a collective sighs and chuckles from the other knights. He can feel his cheeks heating up. Please, don't tell her, he said. Oh no, boy, one of the older knights said. We are sworn to loyalty to the Archbishop, and keeping a secret from her is a sign of us breaking our oath of loyalty to her, he said. The other knights nods and hummed in agreement. You know better as to betray her trust, boy, the other older knight said sternly. Or her heart, another knight said. Better watch out, boy, another said, or we will dash, he said. I won't, he said. Like I said, her grace doesn't like me like that, he said before he rode ahead. Don't get lost now, you hear? Another knight said. Shut up, he exclaimed as he got further and further away. He didn't know, Alois mumbled. You'd expect him the first one to notice, but it turns out he would the last to notice, Alois said before letting out a heavy sigh. I say that they will get together 20 years from now, get married 40 years from now, the knight muttered. I'll give them 50. Another said. I believe in them, so I will give them 10, another said. Thus begun the bet between the knights of Syros on how long will it take before the young knight and their archbishop will get together, not saying about the bet on when will their wedding will happen. It was almost night when they did arrived at the monastery, and he can hear several chuckles behind him. Her grace will be so annoyed, the older knight said. You arrived late and she is probably worried sick about you, he said. And she probably misses you too, another said with a grin. We'll let you off the hook, laddie, Alois said as he took the rein of his horse. Go report to her, he said. Isn't that your job, Captain? He asked. It is, Alois said, but I think she prefers to listen to you talk, he said. I guess, he said, hesitating to leave the task to Alois since he is sure that Alois and the others are just as exhausted as he is. Come on now, boy, the other older knight said, roughly hitting him on his back. Don't keep a lady waiting, he said, giving him a hard shove forward. We will take care of things here, he said. If you guys are sure, he said. Yes, Alois said. Now, go, he said. He nods before leaving. You just don't want to get in trouble because you got him home later than initially planned, do you, Captain? One of the knights asked. She is scary when she is angry, Alois said. The knights hummed and nodded in agreement. He opened the door to the audience chamber and was greeted by an empty room saved for the light in the Archbishop's office. I hope she is taking a rest, he muttered. Knowing her, she most likely is using work as an excuse to hide her loneliness whenever you went away on a mission, Arvel said as he pushed the door to Byleth's office open as gently as he can as to not to disturb her just in case she is sleeping. I was only away for days usually, he said as he saw Byleth leaning down on her table, using her arms as a pillow as she napped the day away. To someone so attached to you, Arvel said, a day would feel like years, he stated as softly as he can as not to wake Byleth. She isn't, he said as he gentle arranged Byleth in a way where he can lift her in his arms without waking her up. Welcome back, twerp, Suthies said softly from the necklace hanging on Byleth's neck. I'm back, Suthies, he said with a soft smile towards the goddess as he carried Byleth out of her office and started walking towards the stairs leading to the third floor. She will be happy to know that you have arrived home, Suthies said, but why are you carrying her back? She asked. Don't you have a report to deliver to her now? Suthies asked. That can wait when she is awake and fully rested, but for now let her sleep, he said as he pulled her closer to his chest. She seems like she is working herself too much, he said. Suthies hummed appreciatively. She have been working herself to the bones since you left for Agir, Suthies said. And why is that? He asked as he climbed the stairs leading to the upper level. Keeping herself busy in your absence, Suthies said. This child have been missing you and she is growing worried about you and the rest, but mostly you, she stated. I didn't mean to make her wait that long, he said, and I wasn't even gone that long, he said. To someone so attached to you, a week of waiting would feel like a decade for them, Suthies said, and this child is no exception, she said. I'm sure that she would be happy to finally have you home, Suthies said in delight. Home. One of the place he never thought he'll ever have. Did she really miss me that much? He asked. More than you know, Suthies said. I'll try to be home on time next time, he said. You do that, twerp, Suthies said affectionately. Byleth stirred sleepily in his arms. She muttered sleepily. I'm just carrying you to your room, Your Grace, he said as Byleth scooted closer to his chest. Just keep resting, he said. Byleth hummed softly before she wrapped her arms around his neck. Welcome home, she said softly. He was shocked at her words, which made him stop in his track. It wasn't the first time Byleth greeted him that way whenever he arrived at the monastery after a mission. Nevertheless, it never failed to shock him and make him warm all over again. He returned the embrace as best as he can, with him carrying her in his arms, and buried his face on her neck, bringing him the sensation of calmness and security as soon as her familiar and beloved scent invaded his senses, and at that moment he knows that. I'm home, he said softly as he closed his eyes as he basked in the warmth and calmness her presence have brought into his whole being. Byleth, he muttered. And he never thought that he'll ever utter those words to anyone in his lifetime. A woman walked past the gates leading to the town below Garag Mach Monastery and scowled. Out of all the places that demmed Agarthan could have run off to, she said, this is the place she choose, she mumbled as she looked for the fanciest inn she can find. This place reeks of my brethren from Nabatea, she said, the benevolent one and the hammer of justice as well as the vessel of the fell star, she muttered. This could be fun, she said as she continued to navigate through the crowd, but they are of no concern for me, she said. My affairs have nothing to do with them but to that heathen, she said, the scavenger of life, she said. Chapter 12, The Brewing Storm. He groaned in pain as his head softly hit the cold marble table in the garden. Despite being a very soft and lovable guy, Arvel said, Alois is a monster when it comes to training, he said. Well, if it meant that her grace is safe, then I guess everyone will be a monster, he said, and that includes me, he said. Of course, Arvel said. Well, she is your beloved archbishop, after all, he said. A timid voice behind him said. The voice made him smile as he lifted his head towards the owner of the voice. Good morning, Ms. Durstein, he said with a happy smile. Oh, good morning to you, young lady. Arvel said. Good morning to you too, Sir Shay, Durstine said, and to you too, Sir Arvel, she said to the silver pocket watch on the table. He heard Arvel hummed in acknowledgement. Done with the morning worship I assume, he said. Yes, Durstine said, and I already told you, Sir Shay, she said, cheeks turning a cute shade of pink, just call me Sophia, she said. I can't possibly do something so informal, he said. But I don't mind, Sophia said, I actually would love it if you call me by my name, Sir Shay, she said. Is that so? He asked with a small smile. Then, if you allow me the privilege of calling you by name, then it will be my delight to abide by your request, my lady, he said with a bow. Sophia giggled at his antics. And graciously bestowing me a laugh and a smile as well, he said, the goddess must be smiling upon me this morning, he said. Or kill you once she knew that you are getting too comfortable with another woman that wasn't her vessel, Arvel thought blankly. Anyway, Sophia, he said, I need to go greet Dash, he said. No need for that, Byleth said behind him. I was just about to get you, your grace, he said as he walks towards Byleth. Oh. Byleth muttered before she gave a rather pointed look towards Sophia. It looks like you are rather occupied, she said. I was just talking with Miss Sophia over here, he said. Miss Sophia, I know you already met her grace, he said looking towards the brunette behind him and missing the way Byleth's eyes turn into hardened amethyst stones as soon as she saw this Miss Sophia look at her knight in a certain way that seems to tug at a certain nerves, namely, the one nerve that seems to send discomfort throughout her being. And your grace, this is Miss Sophia, she comes from former Empire's territory, if I recall, he said. Heavering territory, he said. Is that so? Byleth muttered uninterested. Something wrong, your grace? He asked. Right, Byleth said. I need to discuss something with you, she said in private. Byleth added before shooting another pointed look towards Sophia. Now, we will take our leave, Miss Durstine, Byleth said grabbing his hand and leading him away. I thought that this will turn into a bloodbath, Arvel thought in relief. Good thing she is a calm type, he thought. So, what's the issue? He asked as he leaned down and looked over Byleth's shoulder to read whatever Byleth is reading. Sophia felt someone calling her, Byleth said as she leaned on the backrest of the sofa and closer to him. That is right, Sophia said. They are a good friend of mine back when Agartha and Nabatea still a good relationship between one another and one of the few that refused to raise their arms towards their Nabatean neighbors, she said. So, that person isn't a Slytherer? He asked. Not every Agarthans are Slytherers, Byleth said. Most of them are wanderer like the remaining Nabateans, she said, and some are just minding their business as usual and even friendly with some Nabateans, Byleth said. So, it's just the Slytherers that is hostile, huh? He said. Well, they might have misunderstood the cause I was trying to do, Arvel said. What do you mean? He asked. To put it simply, I never wanted to annihilate Nabatea but to wait until my master comes back, Arvel said. Byleth hummed. That's the extent of my memories, Arvel said sounding troubled. From what I can remember, you are trying to create a utopia for both Nabateans and Agarthans, but seeing as you are going to destroy the very foundation of the world, me and the other Nabateans took arms and fought you for 3 millennia, Sophia said. You turned that war into a massacre, Fellstar, Arvel said. There wouldn't be a massacre if you didn't start a damned war to begin with, Sophia said. I was doing it for you, Arvel said. I want to create a world where you wouldn't be in danger anymore, he said. Sophia was rendered silent at that remark. You almost destroyed Adrestia and created a massive rift in Fodlan that will last for a lifetime, disturb the very nature of life and death, and encourage even more chaos and destruction. Is that the peace you want to achieve, Epimens? A peace that was obtained by blood and pain? Sophia asked. And slaughtering a whole race is your idea of peace? Arvel asked, outraged. You shouldn't even talk, Suthies growled. Agartha also massacred everyone in Xanadu and gave my daughter a lifetime of trauma. Suthies said. It wouldn't even happen if you didn't started it. Arvel said. I started it. Suthies asked, says the man who started a damned war. She shouted. Enough. Byleth shouted, both of you. She said, we are discussing something important here. So, please, Byleth said. Our apologies, girlie, Arvel said. So, where is this friend of yours, Suthies? Byleth asked. I have not a clue about their whereabouts, Suthies said. All I heard is them calling me and asking me for help, she said. Who are they anyway? Arvel asked. You are quite familiar with them, Epimens, Suthies said. They are, after all, one of Agartha's former nobles, she said. Arvel said. What? He asked. I think I have a good idea on who this person is, Arvel said, and out of all the hamlet or towns they can choose, they have to choose this one, he said. Maybe they felt your presence here and thought that they have found the perfect safe haven for them, he suggested. Might be so, Suthies said, but they have been running and hiding for 3 millennia now, she said. Why would they even think about using a deliberate spell to make their presence disappear? Maybe because someone is after them, he asked. Maybe so, Suthies said. But who would? Oh crap, Arvel said. What is it, Arvel? He asked the pocket watch that is hanging on his hips. If my hunch is right, Arvel said, that person took to collecting the life force of those who are about to die, he said. So, a reaper of sort, Byleth said. More like a scavenger, Suthies said. Is that so? Byleth asked. Who do you think would be hunting them? He asked. Maybe someone from Nabatea, he asked. That would be a possibility, Suthies said, but the problem is, she said. What? He asked. That person is neutral, Suthies stated. They are either beloved by the whole of Agartha and of Nabatea or hated by both but never saw as danger or anything. They are an in-between, she said. That's right, Arvel said in agreement. That person is just an overall nice person, he said happily. I know, right? Suthies said in agreement. The person is an intellectual wonder and one can't help but have the time of their lives talking with such a person, she stated. They sounds amazing, Suthies, Byleth said. They are indeed, Suthies said. Oh, I think I have an idea on who is hunting that hermit, Arvel said. Suthies said. If I can guess, she said. Arvel hummed in acknowledgement. If your guess is none other than the mourner of Atlanta, then you are right, he said. Oh, her, Suthies said. Does this have something to do with the fact that they spurred her advances a long time ago? She asked. I hope not, Arvel said. Speaking of which, Suthies said, I wanted to ask you, how did that go? She asked. Oh, you will love this, Arvel said. Shall we discuss this over tea? Suthies asked. You two can't even drink tea, he thought. I heard that, Suthies and Arvel said. Look, you two can drink tea and gossip all you want over who is who got their heart broken by whom, but right now that who is being hunted by who have their heart broken by who, which we have to help, Byleth said. Did you just use 6 who in one sentence? He asked. You are counting? Byleth asked. I wasn't until the second who, he said. I say, Suthies said, you can use that in your sermons when you can't think of anything to say. The congregation will be busy counting how many whos did you put in one sentence long enough for you to think of something, she said. Hey, that's not a bad idea. He said, you should try it sometimes, Your Grace, he said. Arvel hummed in agreement. Anyway, you and Arvel should be telling me who am I looking for and who is looking for who, Byleth said. See. Suthies asked him. She did it again. She said gleefully. Damn it, Byleth muttered. Really, Your Grace? He asked, raising an amused eyebrow. You must really like the word who, he added with an amused smile. The case in point, Suthies, Byleth said, and Circe, she added, and he laughed softly, knowing that when Byleth Sir on his name, it usually meant he managed to poke at her nerve. We need to know about this person, and we need to know fast. And why are you so disappointed, Suthies? Byleth asked. Nothing in particular, Suthies said, sounding quite pouty. He is about to say something when they heard a very, very cautious knock on the door. Come in, Byleth said. As soon as the door opened slowly, he stand right up. Giving the illusion of being formal with her is a very, very essential thing to do, since the whole monastery won't think that Byleth holds him high in her regards, and the last thing he wants the monastery to think is that the archbishop have a favorite among her knights. Pardon my intrusion, Your Grace, and Your Holiness, the knight said to both Suthies and Byleth. Circe and Sir Arvel, he said to him. Is there something you need? Byleth asked as she stood up, still holding the papers she is reading. Yes, Your Grace, the knight said with a bow. Actually, we would like to ask your permission for us to borrow Circe for our scouting mission this afternoon, he said. Just for this afternoon? Byleth asked. Yes, Your Grace, the knight said. We will bring him back as soon as we are finished with the mission, he said. I would appreciate that, Byleth said before turning to him. Do you want to go with them? She asked. Of course, he said, as long as I can be useful around here, he said. Thank you, Circe, the knight said. I shall go about my way and get ready, he said before bowing. I'll see you later then, he said, and the knight nods before he turned to leave. So, he said after he heard the door closed shut. You can go ahead, Byleth said, but come back before dinner, all right? She said, and I meant before dinner because you told me that you'll eat dinner with me, she said. All right, he said, I did say that I'll eat dinner with you, he said. To make up for the week you've been gone, Byleth stated. Right, he said, scratching his head bashfully. Please be home by then, Byleth said. As you wish, he said before he turned to leave and get ready for his scouting mission later. See you then, Byleth asked. You bet, he said before closing the door behind him. Still as aloof as ever, Arvel said. She is my employer, he said. I can't get too close to her or get too attached, he stated, making Arvel sighed. Still as aloof, she muttered to herself as she heard Arvel and Shay's conversation. He'll come around, Suthies said. Maybe so, but even after the things we've been through from that fight with Euroboss, I expect to have him at least to not keep me at arm's length, she said. Just keep at it and wait patiently for him, Suthies said. It's not like I have a choice, she said, but I would love it if he stopped thinking that I'm his boss and start thinking of me as a friend, she said. Or more than a friend is what you really want, Suthies said before chuckling when her heart begun to beat faster. I wasn't. She exclaimed. I want to be close to him and I'm lonely without him, but that doesn't mean I like him like that, she said. I got, Suthies said. I'm serious. She said. Keep telling that to yourself, but we both know, Suthies said. What? She asked. Denial isn't just a word, Suthies said. She promptly stuffed Suthies inside one of the drawers of her desk, and she knows that if Rhea knows about this, she would be promptly turned into cinders. But sorry, Suthies, muffled voice said from inside the drawers, laughing at her. Stuff me to any drawers you like, but it won't set you free. Admit it to yourself already, Suthies said as she broke out into a hysterical laughter. Suthies is surprisingly annoying at times. So, the night started as they both ride slowly around the perimeter of the forest surrounding Gareg Mach. Are you and her grace? He said, trying to find a direct and polite word to say his question without sounding like he is intruding. What? He asked as he looked around the forest. You know, the knight said together. He asked. He promptly looked back at the young knight. What gave you that idea? He asked, feeling his cheeks heating up and his heartbeat speeding up. Well, the two of you are always together and well, he said, some of the knights even saw you usually carrying her grace to her bedchambers, and last night someone saw you and her grace holding each other while you carry her to her bedchambers, the knight said. Why, you guys saw that? He asked. The knight nods. He sighed at that. We are not a couple, he said. I mean, her grace would never view a man like me as anything other than one of her knights, he said. That's not true. The knight said, her grace cares about you an awful lot. He said passionately. So much passion, Arvel said, making the other knight tensed up. Could there be an ulterior motive for that passionate support of yours, your man? He asked. None at all, Sir Arvel. The knight said. Arvel just hummed skeptically. Anyway, it's not like I can see anything wrong here, he said after they made the last sweep on the perimeter. We can head back, he said before he abruptly stopped, as well as feeling the whole forest pause for a while. Sir Shay? The knight asked warily. Listen, he said as nudged his horse backward. Sir Shay? The knight asked again, and this time fearfully. Oh no. He muttered as a giant stone of sort appeared in the clearing. What is that thing? The knight asked as he falls down on his bottom. As, the thing called out, I'ld, my, it said as its singular eye landed on his chest. The ring. Arvel said as the thing raised its hand. He quickly grabs the knight's arm and shadow flash his way out of that surprisingly fast attack, only to find the next arm going towards them. He barely have time to blink, let alone for another shadow flash, and so, he resorted in covering his colleague with own body and hoping that it won't hurt his colleague. He winced in pain as the stone-hard arm hit him on the back before him, and the other knight was thrown a couple of feet away. They both hit the ground with a sickening thud, knocking the other knight in the process. Shay. Arvel said in concern. I'm fine, he said as he looked at the thing once more, and for some unknown reason, he felt scared, but not for him. He felt scared for the knight laying unconscious on the ground. He can't go all out because of him. He can hear Arvel sighing softly before he saw the thing pulled its hideous arms up in preparation for another attack, before he quickly grabbed the knight and throw him as far as he can before the arm come crashing down, and it barely missed him by an inch as it made contact on the ground, sending him a couple of feet away from his initial place. Remember, laddie. Alois said as he saw him closing his eyes as he saw the axe raising. Once Alois managed to disarm him. Don't close your eyes in these crucial moments, he said. Yeah, and watch as I meet my death, he mumbled rather pathetically and moodily as he was once again beaten for the umpteenth time that day. Alois have him an understanding smile despite his rather rude and bratish tone. Keep your eyes open and maybe you can just save your life in a split second before my axe split your head in half, Alois said. Another attack managed to hit him, and this time its clawed hand managed to hit him on the chest, easily tearing through his armor, giving him 3 claw wounds on his chest. Don't close your eyes. Alois' words clearly resounded in his head as he watched the claw come down on him. Chapter 13, Whirlwind of Confusion. He flinched as Alois hit his shoulder for the umpteenth time that day. He kneeled over in pain as he grasped his shoulder. You okay, laddie? Alois asked. Just as the clawed hands of that monster is about to crush him, a familiar presence arrived and a familiar sword cut the thing cleanly in half. Yeah, he said lifelessly. Did something hurt? Alois asked. No. He said. He said. Shay. Byleth called out as soon as she is sure the enemy is slain. I'm just tired, he said as he started to walk towards the entrance of the training grounds. You have been under your element lately, Arvel stated. He said. Byleth, in her haste to get to him, left the sword of the Creator behind. He can feel her pulling him into her arms, and the moment he opened his eyes, he saw her beautiful face warped in a worried expression before it become one of relief. Byleth let out a sigh of relief as soon as she saw him open his eyes. He punched the wall on his side with gritted teeth. Damn it, he said. What a crappy town this is, the woman complained as she wandered about the empty alleyway, no nicin' around, no men leech off from, and most of all, she said, their boozes sucks. The woman said as she stomped her feet like she was a little child throwing a tantrum. Will ya stop your yammering, ungrateful bitch? Someone behind her said. And now I have these uglies surrounding me, the woman said in exasperation. The man asked, obviously angry, judging from the veins that is bulging on his temple. On top on being a moron, you are also a deaf gorilla, the woman said with a sigh. The hell you say? The man asked as the other 5 men circled her. The woman sighed. 5 deaf gorillas versus poor lil ol me, she said, pretending to wipe a tear from her eye as she faked a sob. Whatever shall I do? She muttered, still fake sobbing. With this bunch of ugly and brutish gorillas? She asked. The man seethed in rage before he throws a punch at the infuriating woman before him. Or, the woman said as she caught the fist mid-punch, I can just cave your faces in, the woman said with a manic smile as she crushed the bones of the fist she is holding. What do you think? She asked as the man keeled over in pain and dropping on his knees with a shriek of pain. Oh, shall I take that as a yes? The woman asked with a smile still plastered on her face. And a shriek of pain is all she got. All right, the woman said, as you wish, she said as the man's face met with her high-heeled sandals clad foot, and with a loud and sickening crunch, the stopped shrieking and fell on the ground. No worries, the woman said as she stood straight, imposing, and graceful. Dangerous, he is only unconscious, she said with disgust as she saw a line of yellow liquid flowing onto her direction before she turned her eyes upon the remaining men. Well, I do need a little warm up, the woman said as she fluffed her hair before cracking her fist. The rest of the men backed away as soon as they saw her brilliant brown eyes turned a dangerous red. I think we are lost, Raphael, a man with glasses said as he followed a bulky man to the empty alleyway. We are not, Ignatz. The bulky man said as he navigated through the empty and dirty alleyway. This is a shortcut towards the inn, he said confidently. The smaller man is about to respond when they suddenly heard voices in one of the corners of the alley. Do you hear that, Raphael? The man with the glasses asked cautiously and worriedly as they both heard a shriek of pain. No question. The bulky man said, we have to help somehow, he said before sprinting to the direction of the voice. Hey, Raphael. The man with the glasses said as he ran after the man. When they managed to get to the location of the voices, they are greeted by the sight of a brown-haired woman kicking the jaw of a man, and with a loud crunch, the man fell limply on the ground. The woman heaved a sigh of exasperation. Goodness gracious, she muttered, for such a burly and big man as you bunch are, you sure got have beaten by such a petite and weak woman such as myself. The woman said wondrously. The world sure is full of mystery, she said in amusement. The men behind her just gaped in amazement as the woman kept rambling about what is what before they are taken out of their reverie by her. Oh, the woman said as she turned around to face them with grace and nimble movement of a dancer. And pray tell that you are not reinforcement for these, she said, jabbing her thumb behind her to indicate to the unconscious men. Er, the man with the glasses said in astonishment. No, we are not, he said. We are to help when we thought that someone is in danger, he said. Oh, didn't know there is still good men still roaming this earth, the woman said. Both men stood there, still tongue-tied at the stunningly dangerous woman in front of them. Well, nice knowing you too, the woman said now, I just need a place to crash and... Wait. The bulky man said, making the woman stopped in her tracks. What? The woman asked as she looked towards him. Want to fight then, big guy? She asked. No. The bulky man said as he raised his meaty arms in the air as sign of surrender. What do you want? The woman asked. If you are looking for a place to rest, then how about mine? The bulky man asked. Is this some kind of a come on, big guy? The woman asked with an amused raise of her eyebrow. A come on? The bulky man asked in confusion. The woman simply laughed at that response. I'll take you on your offer then, she said, but if you try anything funny, the woman said as she looked at the men still laying on the ground. We won't, the smaller man said. Good, the woman said. It just meant that I won't be getting this dress dirty, she said, and I'll get to have a place to crash. The woman said with a big smile. Hey, she greeted as soon as she entered the empty training ground saved for the purple-haired man swinging his sword around. Shay stopped and his shoulders tensed as soon as he heard her voice. Your Grace, he greeted mechanically and without the same casualty and warmth he usually greeted her with. How may I serve you today? Shay asked. She feels like she is being punched at the cold and mechanical tone he is using towards her. Stop that, she said, trying to sound cheerful. You know that we are alone, she said as she started to walk closer to him. Shay said as he stood straight, ignoring her presence as she comes closer. And no one is even complaining that you address me as such, she said with a little lie. She heard several devotees saying that her gallant and strong knight is too familiar with her and he ought to keep a boundary between them, but she ignored them. Shay makes her happy and those people can live with that. I will keep that in mind, Your Grace, Shay said, still in that same tone. She frowned at that but quickly recovered. So, since you are finished with your training, she said as she started reaching for his hand. It's been a while since she have held his hand. How about eating dinner with me? She asked as she squeezed his hand gently. The rough and calloused hand she is holding brings comfort and joy to her whole being, and more than usual, she finds herself unable to let go of his hand. Shay gently took his hand away from her grasp just as she is about to intertwine their fingers together. I'm going on patrol tonight, he said. My apologies, Your Grace, Shay said with a bow. Isn't it still someone else's shift? She asked, remembering how the knights took the morning, afternoon, and early evening shifts since Shay have joined them, and also, his shifts always falls on the time she conducts services and to teach the nuns and monks in the convent and when she is asleep. I was thinking of taking his shift, Shay said. The man need to go home to his family, he said. I see, she said. She admired this kind and selfless side of him, truly, she do, but sometimes she can't help but cursed it at times. She wasn't always this greedy, but when it comes to him, she can't help but want to monopolize him. The monastery and even the knights can have anyone they need but Shay, and unfortunately, Shay is one of the strongest knights around and she understands them. She just wished that they don't take him away from her this often. Then, how about having tea with me this evening? She asked. I can't, Your Grace, Shay said as he started cleaning after himself. If you are patrolling, then how about just taking a short break with me? She said as she followed him around the ground. I have to decline the invitation, Your Grace, Shay said. I have a duty to fulfill and part of that duty is you, he said. It stings, she don't know why, and she already expected him to view her as his duty. Regardless, it still stings. Watch your words, boy, Suthies warned from the necklace hanging on her neck. I'm only stating the truth, Your Holiness, Shay said. Protecting her is a duty and therefore, I will fulfill it as per what my duty have told me, he said. Duty? Shay, Arvel said warningly. Shay simply bowed before he walks away from her. Just a duty, she muttered to herself. He is acting strangely, Suthies said. Maybe appointing him as your knight proves to be too much of a burden to him, she said, but he seems to be happy as of late. Before all this happened, she said. I know, she said. Maybe, Suthies said. No, she exclaimed, already knowing what Suthies is about to say. He is needed here, he need to be by my side, she said before she realized what she is saying. Have you forgotten the very reason why you appointed him as one of your knights? Suthies asked. I don't, she said. She said. And appointing him as your personal knight is going too far, Suthies said. She said, still tongue-tied. Tell me, Byleth, Suthies said, is there any ulterior motive other than keeping an eye on him? She asked. I don't know, she exclaimed. I don't know, she said. All I know is that I want him by my side. I want to stay by his side every day for the rest of my life, she said. Other than that, I don't know, she said. I feel so confused, Suthies, she said. She heard Suthies gave a sigh. I'm afraid, I can't help you with that, child, Suthies said. You don't know too? She asked, hoping that whatever this feeling is, then maybe the goddess will know, but it turns out, it is a mystery even to the goddess of Fodlan. I know, child, Suthies said. I know the feeling because I felt it once too with my little Ciro's father, but this feeling varied from people to people, Suthies said. It wasn't just only one language, but it varied from human to human, heart to heart, she said. But I'll tell you this, Suthies said. What? She asked. This feeling you are feeling now have the potential to bring about happiness so immense that it can awaken hidden strength, a feeling so intense that it will make you move mountains only for that person to be happy, a feeling so intense that it have the potential to drive you mad with grief if it's unrequited or is taken from you, Suthies said. It sounds such a frightening feeling, she said. I'm not so sure if I want to even acknowledge that I have that kind of feeling towards him, she muttered. Might be, Suthies said, but it is necessary to face your own feeling in order to stop feeling confused, Suthies said. Tell me how to make it stop, she said. How to make this feeling disappear, she said. I'm afraid that I can't help you with that, Byleth, Suthies said. Only you can solve this, she said. And she wished she can solve it now, so that this thorn in her chest can stop festering. Chapter 14, Whirlwind of Confusion 2. Brown eyes wandered as it scanned the tavern's interior. The warm wooden walls alongside the fireplace made this a very homely place. The tables and chairs seems to be made of excellent quality of oak wood. Here you go, the bulky man said as he served her a roasted chicken marinated in sweet honey from Leicester, and by the smell of it, rosemary and a hint of Almiran spices. Valerie Helena Regnus is the name, Valerie said as she took a swig of her mug. And you two are? She asked as she looked both men. Oh, right, the man with the glasses said. I'm Ignatz Victor, I'm a knight of Gloucester and a self-proclaimed painter, he said. And I'm Raphael Kirsten, the burly man said, and I'm the owner of this inn and also, a knight of the royal house of Bladdid, he said. So, why are you so far away from Fairgus and from Leicester? Valerie asked. Oh, that's because we are keeping an eye around here for Professor's sake, Ignatz said. That's right, Raphael chimed in. Professor is busy and all, and we thought that we can help her here, he said. Professor? Valerie asked. Could it be? She thought that Solon is alive. Valerie thought, then again, I heard that he was slayed by the vessel of the Fell Star 6 years ago. Valerie thought. Oh, she is our old professor back in the academy and our guide during the war, Ignatz said. Valerie hummed in response. She asked. Yes, Ignatz said. So, it wasn't that demmed Solon, Valerie thought. Old man really do need to be put down anyway, just like the rabid dog he is, she thought venomously. It's just too bad that it wasn't by my hand, Valerie said. So, why are you here for, Ms. Regnus? Ignatz asked. Put it simply, Valerie said as she ate a piece of the roasted chicken. I was hunting a certain person, she said after she swallowed. And so, one of the dignitaries from Faergus said as he read the long list of reforms and decree Dmitri have sent her. He is not here, she thought blankly as she keeps looking at the door to the council room, expecting to see Shay come barreling with something of a silly problem such as Seath upsets Flane and now he need help escaping the upset Flane, or telling her that Flane have somehow made half of the knights sick and so he needed to cover for them. He have been avoiding me, she thought as she recalled how Shay would just turn the other way as soon as she in his line of sight, or how he would intentionally ignore her after a brief bow of acknowledgement. Not even the usual happy good morning was muttered her way. What is going on? What did I do wrong? Did I do something for him to hate me? She thought, and upon the last query, her chest tightened. Did he hate me? She thought as the pain in her chest intensified at the thought. He have been fine lately. What happened for him to change? What went wrong? She thought, not even hearing the words the dignitary was saying. She can't concentrate on her duties because her thoughts have been clouded with confusions lately. Confusion as to why Shay's absence affect her so, his cold attitude towards her, everything about him is causing nothing but confusion to her and she doesn't know what to do anymore. A battle, she thought, remembering how Shay is during a fight, determined, strong, undaunted, and by her side right, she thought, I need a battle to happen, and if there is a battle then Shay will be by my side again and then, this feeling will disappear and then, everything will feel right again, she thought as she clenched her fist as soon as she finished that line of thought. Your Grace, the dignitary asked. Leave the paperwork on my desk, Seath, she said. I will come and read it later, she said. Summon Sir Shay to my chamber, she said. About Sir Shay, Your Grace, Seath said carefully. What's wrong? She asked, dreading his next words and praying and hoping that it wasn't another rejection from Shay. Sir Shay is currently indisposed, Seath said carefully. She managed to hold back a groan of frustration at that. Never mind, I'll look for him myself, she said. Seath let out a heavy sigh as soon as the Archbishop is out of the council room in order to search for her beloved knight. Things have been rather tensed lately, since Byleth brought Shay to the monastery with a gaping wound on his chest alongside an unconscious knight. After that, the boy who is always by her side since the day he have been appointed as her knight, the boy never left her side, always waiting at her door first thing in the morning to have breakfast with her, or how the boy is always there to walk her and come pick her up after the morning service or have dinner with her every night, or the occasional trip to town during the weekends after service. So, this is quite puzzling to him too, but he knows it. The look in his eyes as soon as he woke up after he was treated and was greeted by Byleth is all he need to know. He knows what is happening but he will not interfere. This is something only the two of them can resolve, but he hoped someone can at least iron this out, because even if he have lived for 1,000 years or so, this kind of troubles is not just something he went through. He wasn't as emotionally stunted as Byleth after all. Damn it, Geralt, Seath muttered as he massaged his temple. You managed to teach her tactics, weaponry, and even leadership so magnificently, he muttered, but somehow you forgot to teach her how to deal with the matters of the hearts, Seath said. Will you just calm down? Suthies asked as she searched the whole monastery for Shay. I can't, she said, trying to contain the anxiety and the loneliness that is threatening to swallow her whole. I need to see him, she muttered as she keeps looking around the premises. How is it that a hair color as distinctive as his is so hard to spot? Suthies just sighed as she felt the barrage of emotions that is currently laying siege in her usually calm partner's heart, and she internally cursed Geralt for forgetting to teach Byleth about human emotions. His mind kept going back to that same time. How powerless he felt as Byleth come to his rescue, how useless he felt when danger is truly is looking him at the eye. It won't matter if I don't accompany her in battle since she can handle herself. There you are, Byleth said behind him. I have been looking all over for you, she said as she stood before him with a smile on her face. A smile that in any other day would have made his heart skip a beat, made his day even brighter than ever and make him warm all over, but this time, that smile is nothing but condescending in his eyes, and he hated feeling this way towards her. Your Grace, he greeted her with a bow. We have to go town and look for the person Suthies is looking for, Byleth said, and I propose that we go start now before the other Agarthan managed to find them before us, she said. Now? He asked. Yes, and quite urgently too, Byleth said. I sensed someone new entering the town below Gareg Mach and it wasn't Nabatean but Agarthan, she said. Looking for that person is a crucial task we have to do since Suthies said. I have something to do, he said, turning his eyes away from her. Maybe some other time, he said. Look, we have to do this as soon as we can or the town will be in danger if we left them alone, Byleth said. Besides, I needed backup in case a fight broke out between the two, she added. Why should I go with you? He asked rather coldly. You are strong enough on your own, he stated, and he knows it's true, whether I go with you or not, he said as he remembered all of the battles they have fought together, both with the bandits and with Eurobos. He was never needed. Byleth is already strong by her own. Why does it matter if I'm with you when it won't make a difference even if I'm by your side? He asked before he finally managed to look at her. His heart dropped with a loud shatter when he saw the shock, confusion, and hurt on her face at that question before Byleth turned around and leave. Fool, Arvel said. I'm only stating the truth, he said as he continued his patrol. Arvel just heaved a sigh. His partner is being an idiot as usual. Let me get this straight, Raphael said. You are an Agarthan, he said. That's right, Valerie said as she wiped her lips with a napkin. And you are looking for one of your own in order to kill them? Ignatz asked. Hit the nail on the head on that one, Valerie said. But why? Ignatz asked. For a simple reason of they are the cancer of this world, Valerie said, and they all deserve to be put down like the rabid dogs they all are, she said with a subtle smile on her face. Both men are quiet at her remark. So, what can we do to help you, Ms. Valerie? Raphael asked. Raphael. Ignatz asked in confusion. What? Raphael asked. If it's true that they are dangerous people, then it's all the more the reason why we should help Ms. Valerie defeat whoever this person is, Raphael said. You are right, Ignatz said. It's just that, he said before shaking his head. All right, I'm in, Ignatz said. When do we start looking for them, Ms. Valerie? He asked. Tomorrow, Valerie said. We will conduct a search operation throughout the perimeter of Gareg Mach and the town surrounding it, she said. So, we split up? Raphael asked. No, I'm going to conduct a search via a spell, Valerie said, but first thing first, she said looking at the two men. Is there some kind of unusual activity around here? She asked. Ignatz and Raphael looked at each other. Other than the appearance of Suthies during Great Tree Moon, Valerie said. Well, other than that, Ignatz said, there have been several murder and abduction cases happening on one of the town at the foot of Gareg of Mach, he said, not to mention the explosions and fight that happened to that town during Great Tree Moon, Ignatz said. This caught Valerie's interest. It wasn't a secret to all of Fodlan about the Fell Star's manifestation, and it sent every religious nut everywhere foaming at the mouth and do their pilgrimage to Gareg Mach, thinking that if they did so, the so-called goddess of Fodlan will withhold her rage and spare them of the punishment of being thrown into the eternal flames of hell. But she digress. Go on, Valerie said. Well, it have been going on for a while now, but after the appearance of the goddess, the town right now have been a ghost town and the church is keeping it on lockdown until further notice, and I don't think her grace is going to let anyone in anytime soon, Ignatz said. Valerie smiled at that. Well, a prohibited place is still better than nothing, she said, and what is a better place to start other than the place that Archbishop says not to enter? Valerie asked. Geez, young knight said as he entered the library. I really need a drink, he said. Then, maybe you should go to a tavern instead of the library, Sir Eddington, woman said on his side. Hello to you too, Miss Sophia, the young man said as he turned his piercing dark orbs towards her, and it turned a softer tone as soon as his eyes landed on the brunette. And I did tell you that you can address me as Edwin, the young man said. Sophia laughed at that. Or you are just teasing me, my fair lady, Edwin said. I wasn't, Sophia said Sir Eddie, she said with a smile. So, what are you doing here? Edwin asked. Already done with the morning service? He asked. That's right, Sophia said. It's surprisingly short today, Edwin said. Her Grace is a little off today, Sophia said. She seems distracted, she said. Edwin already have a good idea about the Archbishop's mood, and if one can guess, it have something to do with the absence of Shay. He don't know the man that well yet, but he guessed that they are now friends based on the fact that Shay and him usually go out to town drink whenever the Archbishop is busy with her work, and they shared stories of their lives before they joined with the Knight of Ceros. Shay is an earnest man and a kind man to add, a strong warrior, and trusted ally. It's a good thing too, since I kinda want to make something for Sir Shay, Sophia said softly with a smile on her face. Edwin smiled as he saw that beautiful smile upon her face. So, Shay, huh? He said with a teasing tone in his voice. Sophia said, blushing. You don't have to explain it to me, Edwin said. Shay is a nice fellow and he is also the favorite among the knights. You will have a good life if you were able to make him reciprocate your feelings, he said. What? Sophia exclaimed. I was just thinking of giving him something as thanks for all his hard work and dash, she said. I really need a drink, Shay muttered as he entered the library. And speaking of the devil, maybe you should visit the local tavern instead of going to the library, Arvel said. Yeah, Shay said. One yeah is enough, Arvel said. Geez, you are choosy, Shay said. Sophia smiled before she looked back at the book she is reading. Edwin chanced a look on the book Sophia is reading, and it's mostly consist of cloak design and types of fabrics. So, a cloak, huh? He thought. Hey, there, Shay greeted them. Sir Shay, Sophia greeted back. How are you doing? She asked. Tired, Shay said with a slight smile, but still alive and kicking, he said. Aren't you overdoing it, buddy? Edwin asked. Shay frowned ever so slightly. Well, I have to make sure that Her Grace is safe, he said. I think you should take a break, Sir Shay, Sophia said. I think I'll do that just now, Shay said as he took a seat next to her. Mind if I do it next to you, Miss Sophia? He asked. Sophia just smiled at him. I'll take that lovely smile of yours as yes, Shay said with a small smile on his face, making Sophia giggle. Say, Sir Shay, Sophia said. Shay hummed as he lifts his head from his arms. If you don't mind me asking, Sophia said, what is your favorite color? She asked. Shay seems to think for a moment. I guess, he said before a small and soft smile came across his face. I guess, he said indigo, Shay said softly. I see, Sophia said. Edwin just smiled at the interaction before an idea struck his mind. Say, Miss Sophia, he said. Yes, Sir Eddie. Sophia asked. Didn't you say that you are planning on going to town tomorrow? Edwin asked. I was. Sophia asked. Did you already forgot? Edwin asked. You are planning on making something for your friend for his birthday and you wanted to buy some of the materials for it, he said, praying that Sophia will catch on to what he is trying to insinuate, and the sudden shine in her bright brown eyes, she seems like she caught on to him. Yes, Sophia said, I'm indeed planning to go to town tomorrow to buy the materials for this gift, she said. Really? Shay asked. Why yes, Sophia said. Then, if you don't mind, Shay said, mind if I accompany you tomorrow then? He asked. Oh, Sophia said as her cheeks turn a pretty pink, I would love it if you would accompany me tomorrow, but Her Grace and you usually go to town every weekend, Sophia said, and I don't want to interfere with your plans, she said. Shay gave her a sad smile. Her Grace wouldn't mind, he said. She have better things to do than bother with a man like me, Shay said. Sophia's smile suddenly dropped upon hearing the way Shay says his piece, and she want nothing more than to make whatever is making him sad disappear. After all, she does love his smile the most, since it gave her a strange sort warmth that lasted throughout the day, and seeing him smile is enough to make her happy for the rest of the day, even if his smiles wasn't as bright and happy as whenever it was directed towards the Archbishop. Then, Edwin said, clapping his hands together to catch their attention, "It's a date then," he said. "It wasn't," Shay said with a blush on his face. "Even though you are the one who asked her out," Edwin said with a teasing smile on his face. "You sly dog," he said. Sophia just smiled as she watched them interact together. Tomorrow. Sophia can't help but smile. Tomorrow, she would have him all to herself. Chapter 15, The Hunt Begins. Valerie said as they arrived at the ghost town. "So," she said as she looked around the town, "this where the fight took place, huh?" she muttered as they navigate through the empty and lifeless town. She couldn't help but feel bad for the people that didn't survive the ordeal that happened here. How they are killed in order to keep the deeds happening here a secret, long enough that whoever is attempting that damned spell is able to hide it until he is ready to activate it, and in turn, whoever it is managed to destroy such a lovely town. Agarthans really are the scum of this earth. "This is kinda creepy," Ignatz said. "Yeah," Raphael said. "I bet Lysathea will be freaked out if she ever did set foot in this part of Gareg Mach," he said. "I bet," Ignatz said. "Hey, I feel something in this castle," Valerie said. "Really?" Ignatz asked as he looked at the slightly worn-out castle before them. "Is this castle always here?" he asked. "I don't recall it being here, even if did venture this town from time to time with Professor," he said. "More likely, the bastard who owned this castle is using a cloaking spell to hide away their hideout until it was discovered by the Fellstar and her vessel," Valerie said as the emblem on the castle caught her attention. "It's one of the great noble houses of Agartha and one she is familiar with. I guess it's high time you already joined your loved ones again, friend," she muttered softly. "May you rest in peace in the afterlife," Valerie said as she pushed the door open. "Ms. Regnus," Ignatz called out. "Let us go," Valerie said as she went further into the castle. "But," Ignatz said. "What?" Valerie asked. "It's too dark," Ignatz said. "Oh, right," Valerie said before she muttered a short chant, and the whole premises around her was illuminated there, Valerie said. Ignatz and Raphael can't help but be impressed by this peculiar magic of hers. It wasn't too intimidating, and some are even useful. Raphael said as they arrived at the last floor of the castle. "What is it?" Valerie asked, stopping in her tracks. "Is this castle some kind of a storage?" Raphael asked as he saw several tools and swords and shields on the castle's walls and chest. "Not at all," Valerie said as she leads them around. "This castle used to belong to House Simone of Agartha," she said, "as well as the whole of this area you now called as Okama Mountains." Valerie said, "When the 3,000 Years' War ended, Nabatea conducted an all-out massacre across Agartha, and this whole clan was massacred when all of them failed to enter Shamhala in time." She said, "Not that I blamed them for the ensuing massacre after the war. That damned Epimens is the one to blame for trying to recreate the very foundation of the world itself," Valerie said. "Epimens?" Raphael asked. "A man that was said have inherited a great power from the god of Agartha, Zaras," Valerie said. "The god of chaos and destruction," she said. "Oh," Ignatz said. "Just like Professor," he said. "Professor?" Valerie asked. "Oh, she is the current archbishop now," Raphael said. "You mean, Byleth Eisner?" Valerie asked. "Yes," Ignatz said. "Lady Rhea said that Professor have inherited the power of the goddess after she cut the sky with the sword of Creator," he said. "I see," Valerie said. And that must be Professor that made the goddess appeared during Great Tree Moon too. Raphael said. Interesting, Valerie said with blood-hungry smile. If things goes well then I will have to fight the Archbishop and Suthies, she said. Please, don't harm Professor, Ms. Regnus, Ignatz said. I won't, Valerie said, as long as she don't get in my way, she said as they continue to look around the castle. Both Ignatz and Raphael look at each other and Raphael gave Ignatz a reassuring look that says that if Valerie is indeed just after a bad person then Professor won't interfere and might even help Valerie in her quest to rid this world of anyone who is awful. As they navigate through the dark hallway of the now abandoned castle, a flash of bright light caught Ignatz's eyes. Ms. Regnus, Ignatz said. Yes. Valerie asked. Look, Ignatz said pointing to the light in one of the dark rooms. Valerie walks towards the light and her eyes widened before her smile become even wider. What? A lucky find, she said. What is it, Ms. Valerie? Raphael asked. To come upon this priceless and very useful treasure in all of Adrestia, Valerie said happily. A scale model, Ignatz muttered in awe at the way the giant scale model of the town and of the town on the foot of Garagmok and of Garagmok itself is sculpted. Wait, is this? Ignatz said as he carefully walks through the miniature city. What are these? He asked as he saw several magic circle around the city and towards Garagmok. Those are magic circle that was established by Eurobos, Valerie said, remained dormant and useless since the Archbishop managed to disrupt whatever spell he is planning to cast, she said. But is this some kind of a danger if left alone? Ignatz asked. I mean someone can reactivate the spell and dash, he said. Relax, glasses boy, Valerie said. No one reactivate this particular spell without the necessary trigger, she said. As long as the necessary triggers are absent then the spell will remain dormant, Valerie said. Ignatz managed to sigh in relief before he saw some of the model of people walks around town. But how? He asked in fascination as he watched the town at the foot of Garagmok comes to life. It's a tool for surveillance, Valerie said. Zara's made this tool as a way to keep his plans in check, to monitor every movement, every spell that is cast, she said. What an amazingly crafted tool, Ignatz said in awe. This one is called the Ethra, Valerie said, a fitting name in my opinion for the god who always demand perfection, and with this tool at hand, he is free to look upon the earth with this tool and freely plan his reign as he sat in his throne in the Alcong, Valerie said. And what a perfect tool for us to use in order to search for that damned fiend, Valerie said with a smile. He looked himself in the mirror and made sure everything is in place. His black tunic is in place, his waistcoat in its proper place, his pants is ironed and his arm and chest armor properly worn, and his hair is as tamed as possible. She will be so jealous if she knew that you are not wearing a full armor when with another woman, Arvel said. She won't, he said as he strapped his sword around his waist. Arvel just sighed. Well, you look good, he said. I'm sure the young lady will love the look, Arvel said. He ignored that remark as he shut the door behind him. Going somewhere? Seath asked. Good morning, Seath, he said trying to sound as formal with Bylitha's right-hand man. Seath frowned at his greeting which puzzled him. You haven't been reporting to the Archbishop as of late, he said. I'll report to her after I get back, besides it's my day off today, he said trying to sound like a knight reporting to his superior. Seath sighed at that. Just, he said, just go to her even if it's just for a second, Seath said before he turned to leave. She would appreciate it if you just come by and greet her, he said as a final remark. He scoffed. As if she will, he muttered. It won't change a thing, he said as he walks away from his room. Shay is not here, she thought as she hit one of the knights she is sparring with square on the chest with enough strength that she managed to knock him off his foot. He isn't going to follow me, he isn't by my side, she thought as she hit another, and this time hard enough that she managed to dent his armor, and she is about to deliver a blow. Halt! Suthies! Said, have you forgotten that this is a sparring session, Archbishop? She asked. She managed to stop herself from dealing a possible fatal blow on the knight's head. Your movement is too sloppy, too reckless. Suthies admonished. I managed to deal a blow to my foes, right? She said rather moodily. And managed to let one of the foes to sneak behind you, Suthies said. She looked behind her to see another knight with wooden sword pointing on her back. When did he, she thought. You are like a child swinging a sword with reckless abandon. Gerald taught you better than this, Suthies said. She took a deep breath to calm herself down. I apologize, Suthies, she said. Just take a break, Suthies said. It's no good to keep training like this when all you got is a bad result from it, she said. I know, she said before turning to her knights and saw them practically froze over as soon as she faced them. You are all dismissed, she said. Good work, she said before she turned to leave, not in the mood to clean after herself. Suthies can feel a torrent of emotions going through her partner's heart. She have to come back to his senses, and he have to do it fast, since Byleth is starting to become more and more reckless as the days passed by. As soon as he arrived at the entrance of the monastery, he saw the young nun in a simple red-colored dress with a belt wrapped around her waist. Her hair is fashioned in a half ponytail. What? Sophia asked, blushing under his gaze. Is something wrong with what I'm wearing? She asked. This seems to take him out of his reverie. Nun, he said as he smiled at the nun. You look beautiful, he said softly. It took Sophia a second to process that he just complimented her before she gave him a happy and loving smile. Thank you, she said. You look as cool as you did when you are wearing an armor, Sophia said. I don't look that much when I wear my armor, he said, flustered at the compliment. More like I don't really stand out that much, he said, scratching his head. Not at all, Sophia said with a smile. You look really gallant and cool in your armor, Circe, she said. You look just like one of those knights in the books I usually read when I was a child, Sophia said. He laughed softly at that. I thank you, Miss Sophia, he said with his usual happy smile. Sophia smiled upon seeing the smile that always makes her day brighter and keeps her happy all day, the smile that she loves so much. Shall we go? He asked as he offered his arm to her. Sophia took his arm graciously and quite eagerly. We shall, she said as she leaned on his broad shoulder that is for once freed of his shoulder armor. So, this is all there is, huh? Valerie asked after they finished searching the whole castle of whatever useful stuff they can find. How about we start casting the spell for the main event of the day? She smiled maniacally before she turned towards Ignatz and Raphael. Stay here and monitor the Ethra while I conduct a wide-range search spell, she said before she walks towards the staircase leading to the rooftop in order to get a better vantage point for the maximum effect of the spell she is about to conduct. And after this, she muttered as a magic circle appeared under her. I will finally going to rip you to shred and rid the world of your filthy presence. Valerie said. Check the description for the links to the author.